For this episode of Gameplay Classics, I thought I would do things a little different. I've already touched upon the video game war of the early 1990s between the Sega Genesis and the Super Nintendo. This was a great time to be a gamer, and I wanted to go back and relive the debate of which was the ultimate console. Before we take a look at NBA Jam on both consoles, let's look at a brief history on this great franchise. NBA Jam was developed and published by Midway in 1993. The game was developed by Mark Turmell, who was employed at Midway for 17 years before going to EA. He has developed many great games including Smash TV and NFL Blitz. NBA Jam was developed on an arcade system called the Midway T-Unit. This arcade board would be responsible for 3 big hits for Midway, including Mortal Kombat 2, which I still consider the best of the series, as well as NBA Jam and NBA Jam Tournament Edition. In 1989, Midway released Arch Rivals, which many believe to be the father of NBA Jam. The games are very similar, with NBA Jam perfecting the formula.
Terrible shot!
NBA Jam helped make popular arcade-style sports games. They were not the first in this arena, but they captured gamers' attention more so than any other arcade-style sports game. The game immortalized catchphrases like Monster Jam! Boom shakalaka! For those of you who are unfamiliar with NBA Jam, here's the lowdown. NBA Jam is a 2-on-2 full-court basketball game. NBA teams are represented by 3 to 5 authentic players, with only 2 being selected for a quarter. Some basic basketball rules remain the same, such as 24-second shot clock violations and goaltending violations, but that's where it ends. This is full-contact basketball. NBA Jam is best played with friends or at the arcade with complete strangers. Players can perform a variety of gravity-defying dunks, usually accompanied by snappy catchphrases.
Jams it in! Hello, rejected!
The game became an instant success in the arcades, and home console ports were to be expected. Now, if you include the Tournament Edition, the game has been ported to the Game Boy, the Game Gear, the Sega CD, the Sega 32X, the Sega Saturn, the Sony PlayStation, and the Atari Jaguar. Now, the games that we'll be comparing on this episode are the Sega Genesis and the Super Nintendo versions.
Jam. Jam.
Jam!
Jam.
Both games look great and are close to the arcade. Now, some sacrifices had to be made when it was ported to the less powerful hardware. Things like scaling players who would grow bigger when they got closer to the player, and the detail of the players as well as the crowd. In the arcade version, the crowd would move when they cheered. Now, looking at both the Genesis and the Super Nintendo versions side by side, the Super Nintendo's bigger color palette is an advantage as it looks to have a little more detail. Both games do a great job of bringing the arcade look and feel home. At the time of the release of this game, I had the Genesis version, and if you don't see them side by side, you would have a hard time telling them apart. But that doesn't change the fact that the Super Nintendo has more color, and it does show when you compare them side by side. For this round, graphics go to the Super Nintendo. Again, both games do a great job in the sound department. However, there are some differences. The Genesis sound is clear, but the announcer does sound like he has a sore throat.
He's heating up!
The Super Nintendo, which many would agree had the better audio chip, also has some problems. I find the sound to be muffled a little on the Super Nintendo.
From downtown!
So here we have an announcer who sounds scratchy,
He's on fire!
or one that sounds muffled.
Oh my!
The music in the game is very similar, but for some reason, I prefer the Genesis version.
Welcome to NBA Jam!
I think that I'm in the minority for that, but guess what? It's my review. The Genesis also plays music during the game, where this is absent from the Super Nintendo.
Wide open.
Additionally, the commentary is perfectly suited to the gameplay and uses catchphrases that are still quoted even today. Now, with the release of NBA Jam on the Wii, Xbox 360, and the PS3, I'm sure these catchphrases will continue for a new generation. As for the Super Nintendo and the Sega Genesis, I think most would agree that they are both well done. I prefer the announcer on the Super Nintendo, but like having the music playing during the game. For the sound, I would have to give them a tie. NBA Jam is known for its great control that's really easy to pick up and play. Anyone who has ever held a video game controller would be able to get some fun out of this great game. The game only uses 3 buttons: pass, shoot, and boost. Back when this game was first released, I thought the Genesis version had better control by using the 3 face buttons on the controller. Now, playing the games today, I have to say that using the shoulder button on the Super Nintendo for boost made things a little easier. You can't go wrong with either controller, but in my opinion, the Super Nintendo wins this round. In the arcade, NBA Jam was a big hit for Acclaim. The game was original, and most of all, it was fun. NBA Jam is all about fast-paced basketball play, and of course, the slam dunks. Playing the game with friends is a total blast and would result in verbal taunts where everyone would claim to be the best. Both the Genesis and the Super Nintendo versions are equal when it comes to fun. This would be another tie.
Puts up a flip around for rebound.
The truth is that both versions are so similar that you really can't go wrong with either. They play well, have great graphics and sound, and are a blast with friends. If you have the opportunity to get both, I would suggest the Super Nintendo version for the slightly better graphics and the controller. If you don't have a Super Nintendo, get the Genesis version and you won't be disappointed. For the overall score, I would give the Genesis a 4 out of 5, and for the Super Nintendo, a 4.5 out of 5. These are classic games and can be enjoyed even if you don't like basketball or sports in general. Thanks for watching, and keep playing the classics.
Flip around for rebound.